session of Agenda, we bring to you the heartbreaking story of baby Amal. Amal, who's just 5 years old now, and 2 years ago she was brutally raped in the Narayana area of the capital. When Agenda brings to you her story, it is at the same time intensely tragic story, but also a story of hope, because while Amal's case, the rape case, was dismissed by a lower court, this week the High Court has upheld it. But in order to reach this point of triumph, Amal has also had to go through a huge amount of trauma. She was questioned by the lower court and asked and called an unreliable witness, even though she managed to identify the rapist, the perpetrator of this horrendous crime against her. On the show today, we'll be speaking to senior criminal lawyer Rebecca John. We'll be also speaking to Inakshi Ganguly, the co-founder of HUC, who first brought and took baby Amal and her family in, and they really took on the case, got pro bono involved so that an appeal could be filed. Here's Amal's story. She's been named that by the lawyers because Amal means hope.
Court papers have called her baby N, but her lawyers and activists call her Amal or Hope. It's a 5-year-old's cheerful manner which inspires it, giving away no traces of the fact that just 2 years ago she was brutally raped, a crime so severe that she's had 3 reconstructive surgeries and another one on the way, and a crime that the judge dismissed as no crime at all, setting the accused free by calling her an unreliable witness.
और मेरी बच्ची ने मेरे से छूटते हुए बोली से वही अंकल है, सो अंकल ने मेरे को बहुत बुरी तरह से जंगल में मार रहे थे और वही अंकल है से मेरे साथ बदतमीजी की है। बाकी जज साहब अपने आप इतनी बुरा तरह से सवाल कर रहे थे, बोलने लगे से गुड़िया बताओ कौन अंकल थे से तेरे को जंगल में मार रहे थे। उसने बोला से यही अंकल थे से मेरे को जंगल में मार रहे थे। फिर उसके बाद ने फिर पूछा से गुड़िया तूने झूठ बोलती है, तू तो बहुत बिल्कुल झूठ बोल रही है, अंकल नहीं थे। नहीं अंकल यही अंकल थे से मेरे को मार रहे थे। फिर मैंने कहा सर ऐसा करो जो जंगल में कपड़ा मिला वो कपड़े को दिखाओ बच्ची को, उसकी वजह से फिर भूलती हुए जज साहब ने मेरे से डांट के बोल दिया से नहीं जो सवाल हम करेंगे वो आपको नहीं करना, वो मैं करूँगा, चलो मैं पूछ रहा।
When the accused was acquitted in February this year, this 25-year-old mother who earns 200 rupees daily as a laborer didn't know what to do. She'd been abandoned by family and her neighbors made things worse, so she moved Amal to an orphanage. It was only months later, in July this year, that they got help from activists who moved the High Court, which set aside the trial court's order this week.
I think that even though the child is so young, right from the beginning, she's shown a lot of determination and a lot of clarity in her testimony, and there was no doubt in Amal's mind at any time that this was a perpetrator or this is where the evidence could be.
The Delhi High Court slammed the trial court for questioning the child like an adult witness. The court said the child was not accountable for the circumstances at the time of the incident and said the trial court confused the child by asking her the difference between truth and lies.
Since December 16, there has been major scrutiny into rape trials, but this case exhibits just what can and does go wrong, especially into courts and trials involving children. Fortunately, the High Court stepped in, and what's even more important is that people who work with this little girl say that she doesn't seem to be exhibiting any signs of trauma.
We had her consult a child psychologist at AIMS, and the psychologist told me that Amal actually doesn't disclose any signs of depression or post-traumatic stress disorder, and she's actually a very cheerful child.
On October 27th, the court will finally pronounce the sentence to the rapist. Activists are hoping by that time Amal will be in school so that she can add to all the courage that she's shown in her personality. In New Delhi, Sunetra Chaudhary for NDTV.
So the good news is that tomorrow the pro bono lawyers and activists will be taking her to certain schools in order to make this story not one of heartbreak and tragedy, but a happy story in the end, because they wanted to get into school. What's also really heartbreaking is that when I met her, you would have seen the pictures, but we've had to blur them so that her family can't be identified. What was amazing was that despite all that she'd gone through, Amal was smiling throughout. So here's the question really, just looking at what has happened in this entire case, why are child victims or other victims of rape, why are they put through this kind of interrogation in an open court? That's what we are asking. And Rebecca John, what do you make of all these questions that she was asked, and then that kind of questioning also being upheld by the trial court?
You know, what I find most insensitive in this whole case is the fact that two courts, the magistrate under section 164 and the trial court, both subjected her to very gruesome cross-examination. Now, when a 164 statement is being recorded by the trial judge, by the magistrate, certain parameters have to be taken into account. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
The magistrate who recorded this child's 164 statement actually asked some of the most irrelevant questions, which later on acted as an impediment in trial. The magistrate, for example, asked her which school she went to, although this child was only 2.5 years old, and the High Court has come down very heavily on the magistrate for asking such a irrelevant and completely inane question. The issue of her sexual assault was actually never put to her, but then that was used subsequently in the trial against the child, because the the trial judge then decided that because she had not acted or because she had not stated anything about the sexual assault, she was an unreliable witness. The fact of the matter is the judicial process let her down, at least in the trial stage. The High Court has stepped in, and the High Court has reversed a terrible injustice that has taken place as far as this child is concerned. But two levels of judicial officers failed this child. The magistrate, while recording her 164 statement, and the sessions judge, while holding the trial. Both these senior officers of the judiciary actually failed this child.
That's right. And Inakshi Uncle, I wanted to ask you, you saw her going through this entire process when she was appearing in court. First of all, I find it incredible, all of us actually, there's been so much reaction to when we did this story, that a young girl could testify. She's so young, you know, barely out of being a toddler. What was it like for her to go through this process?
Give me a minute. When Amal, when she first came to meet us, and in fact I was the first person to meet her from my team, she came and she stood near my table, and her mother said, we were just sitting and chatting, and the mother said, you know, she's just been through her first operation, and she just lifted her little dress, and there was a bag hanging here, because her insides had been destroyed so completely that she was shitting and pissing into this bag. And at that point, that bag had to be changed 10 times a day. Each bag cost 20 rupees. Her mother earned 200 rupees. 200 rupees a day was on a bag for her. And that went on for a while till we got her to her second surgery, her third surgery. But I don't think she quite realized what had happened to her, because she was very little. She was 3, and you can imagine at 3 how much, you know, she was talking.
And yet extraordinarily
she
led the police to the forensic evidence and to the perpetrator.
And despite having led the police to where it all happened, because nobody asked her how she got there,
yes,
they used the same evidence of how she got to the jungle, because she didn't say how she reached the man or how reached the jungle, because nobody asked her that. And that was, as Rebecca pointed out, used against her, because she was unable to, and it was stated that she was unable to say how she reached the jungle. I mean, it's just...
So it really brings us to this, Rebecca John. Are there really any safeguards for special victims? We thought that Justice Verma committee, and of course this incident happened before that, but it's been taken place, the entire trial took place in a fast-track court. So that kind of thing looks like it's being dealt with. And yet, a child, first of all, being examined in open court, being asked such kind of questions, are there no safeguards for special victims?
Actually, the Delhi High Court has gone to great extents to have two courts, one in Karkaduma and the other in the Saket courts, which is called the Vulnerable Witness Court, specifically for victims of sexual assault and specifically child victims. Those are lovely courts. But the point is that you can have all this infrastructure, you can have courts which protect the vulnerable witness. But if you're presiding judge, if you're prosecuting agency, do not go the extra mile and do not change the language and functioning of the court. Everything remains the same. You can have a very nice court where a child is made to sit on a sofa, but ultimately, if the child is subjected to this kind of questioning, and if the child is disbelieved...
When does it have to be in camera?
When it has to be in camera, when a support person, you see, I'm not sure why POCSO was not invoked in this case. I'm not very sure about the timeline. But today, it is statutorily provided that a support person must be with the child, that the in-camera proceedings have to take place, that the child does not have to see the perpetrator ever for purposes of identification. Now, these are statutory guidelines. These are statutorily provided by the Act. So why was this open trial taking place with respect to a... she's not even a minor, she's a baby, with respect to such a small child who was able to actually be very lucid in the manner in which she answered questions. I don't think you can find fault with the child at all. She was very, very lucid. And that has been reproduced in the High Court judgment, both with respect to her statement made to the magistrate under 164 and with respect to the evidence she gave during trial. There was nothing wrong with the manner in which the trial, manner in which the child answered those questions. It is the manner in which the judge, and in fact the High Court has used the word cavalier in casual fashion, and it has been used, I would say...
interrupt you because Inakshi here has a point about why it wasn't in camera.
This is because the POCSO Act was enacted in November 2012, and the case happened. Her rape had happened. 2012. It was before.
Just 1 month before.
Just 1 month before, and therefore POCSO was not applicable, and so she was taken to a fast track court.
That is true. I agree with you, Inakshi, but... No, I agree with you, Inakshi, but the point is, even if POCSO had not been enacted, there are provisions in the CRPC as well as the IPC for rape victims. Even those were not followed here. And they precede POCSO. So, I'm just aghast at the...
Ganguly, we have to take a short break. When we come back, just some more details about baby Amal. How shockingly she had to undergo another trauma because the family at one point felt it might be better for her to go and stay in an orphanage. So what happened? What was the impact of that? We'll discuss that in just a bit. Just stay with this.